The morning started like any other for the young woman who visited the little cafe at the corner of the street. She walked the same path every day, passing the same row of shops, the same newspaper stand, and the same old man who always fed the pigeons near the fountain. Everything about her routine felt familiar and safe. She liked it that way. It gave her comfort, especially on days when life felt a bit too fast or too loud. When she pushed open the cafe door, the warm smell of fresh coffee wrapped around her. It was one of her favorite things about the place. The soft background music, the quiet chatter of a few customers, and the calm atmosphere made it feel like a small break from the rest of the world. She joined the short line and glanced around the room, just observing like she always did. And there he was again, the man she had noticed during the past week. He sat in the same corner every morning, almost like he had claimed that spot as his own. He never talked to anyone. He didn't even seem to look up unless something demanded his attention. He kept a newspaper open on the table, but she often wondered if he actually read it or just used it to blend in. There was something different about him, something she couldn't explain easily. He wasn't loud or unfriendly or unusual in a way that would make people stare. In fact, most people didn't notice him at all. He looked like an ordinary man living an ordinary life. But to her, his presence felt sharp, almost like he carried energy that didn't match the quiet room. When it was her turn, she ordered her usual drink. While waiting, she glanced again toward his corner. He wasn't reading this time. He was looking at the door, then at his wristwatch. Something about the way he checked the time made her pause. It wasn't impatient, like someone late for work. It was more alert, like he was waiting for something specific to happen. She brushed the thought away. Maybe he simply had a busy day ahead. Maybe he was nervous for an appointment. She reminded herself not to overthink things. People had their own lives and their own worries. Not everything needed a deeper meaning. She received her drink and stepped outside. The sky was bright but soft, the kind of morning that felt gentle on the eyes. She started walking toward the bus stop, sipping slowly, letting the warmth of the coffee help her wake up fully. Behind her, the cafe door opened again. She didn't look back at first, but she noticed footsteps coming out right after her. When she glanced over her shoulder, she saw the same man walking in the opposite direction. Their eyes met for a quick moment. He gave a polite nod, the kind a stranger gives when recognizing another familiar face. She returned the nod, feeling a small smile tug at the corner of her mouth. Nothing about the moment was extraordinary. Something about the man's expression stuck in her mind. His eyes carried a seriousness she rarely saw in people during early mornings. Even when he nodded, the focus in his gaze didn't fade. She continued walking, telling herself she was just imagining things. Some people simply had a strong presence. That didn't mean anything unusual was happening. But then, as she neared the end of the street, she heard a loud clatter. It came from near the cafe. When she turned around, she saw a cyclist skidding on the pavement and falling to the ground. A few people gasped and stepped back. It all happened so fast that she couldn't even react properly. What surprised her wasn't the accident. Accidents happened. What surprised her was how quickly the man from the cafe moved. She barely blinked before he was already beside the injured cyclist. He knelt down, checking the person's arm, speaking in a calm and steady voice. He wasn't panicking like the others. He wasn't hesitating. He knew exactly what to do. Some people rushed forward to help. But he directed them clearly, almost like he was used to taking charge during emergencies. He told one person to call for an ambulance. He asked another to bring water. He kept the injured cyclist awake and talking, making sure they stayed conscious. The woman watched from a few steps away, her coffee still in her hand, untouched now. She felt a strange mix of worry and shock. She didn't know the cyclist, but she hoped they would be fine. What she couldn't stop thinking about, however, was the man's reaction. Most people freeze for a moment in situations like this. Most people hesitate. But he didn't. After a few minutes, the ambulance arrived. The medical team took over, and the man stepped back quietly, as if his part in the situation was complete. He didn't stay for attention or thanks. He simply dusted off his hands and walked back toward the cafe. The woman hesitated, then followed him slowly. Something inside her told her she needed to say something, even if it was small. When she reached the cafe door, she saw him sitting again in his corner seat, as calm as he had been before. It was almost hard to believe he had just handled an emergency with such confidence. She approached the counter to get a napkin, then turned slightly toward him. She wasn't sure if she should speak first, but he noticed her before she decided. He looked up, meeting her eyes with the same focused expression. "You acted really fast out there," she said gently. He nodded once. "Just did what anyone would do." She wanted to disagree but didn't push it. Instead, she gave him a small, sincere smile. "Well, it was good you were there," didn't reply immediately. He just offered a slight smile in return, almost careful, as if he wasn't used to receiving compliments. There was a silence between them, not awkward but thoughtful. After a moment, she stepped back. "Have a good day," she said. "You too," he replied quietly. As she left the cafe again, something felt different. The morning still looked normal. People were still living their usual routines. But she couldn't shake the feeling that the quiet man in the corner wasn't as ordinary as he tried to appear, and though she didn't know it yet, this simple morning would be the first small shift in a story that would soon change everything. The next morning arrived with the same soft light, the same quiet breeze, and the same familiar street she walked every day. Yet something in her felt different, as if a small thread had been pulled loose in her routine. She kept remembering the man's calm face during the accident, how he had moved with speed and certainty. She didn't know why it stayed so fresh in her mind, but it did. When she entered the cafe, the warmth felt comforting again, and the smell of roasted coffee beans made her shoulders relax. She stepped into the line and looked toward the corner instinctively. He was there, just like always, sitting in the same seat. This time he didn't have a newspaper open. Instead, he was staring out the window with a thoughtful expression, almost like he was waiting for something he couldn't fully see. She ordered her drink, and then paused before moving to the pickup counter. She noticed something small, but unusual. His table had no drink on it. Every other day, he had something: a cup of black coffee, a pastry, or at least a half-full glass. Today, nothing. Just an empty table and him sitting very still. When she got her drink, curiosity nudged her forward. She stepped toward his corner, not fully sure why she felt the need to talk to him again. "Good morning," she said softly. He looked up with a calm nod. "Morning. I didn't see you order anything today." He glanced at the counter, then back at her. "Not thirsty yet." She couldn't explain it, but something about that answer felt like he wasn't being completely honest. He didn't look like someone who would sit in a cafe without a reason, but she didn't want to push. "I'm glad the cyclist was okay yesterday," she said. "You really helped." He didn't respond right away. He just studied her face as if trying to decide whether her words carried something more. "I was just in the right place," he said quietly. She gave him a small nod, even though she knew most people wouldn't react the way he did. Before she could say more, the door opened behind her. A few customers came in, chatting loudly, and the moment broke. She didn't want to interrupt his morning further, so she told him to have a good day and left the cafe. But as she walked down the street, she noticed he stepped out only seconds after her. She slowed her pace slightly, pretending to adjust her bag to see if he would pass her. He didn't. He kept a steady distance behind her, but didn't seem to be following her either. It was as if their paths simply overlapped. When she reached her bus stop, she turned around instinctively. He was standing at the corner, checking his watch again, the same way he had done yesterday. It almost felt like he was waiting for something important, something that had nothing to do with coffee or morning routine. She tried to dismiss the thought, telling herself she was reading too much into a stranger's habits. After all, everyone had their own reasons for things, but that uneasy tug inside her didn't fully go away. The rest of the day at work went normally. She answered emails, attended meetings, and listened half-heartedly to office chatter. Yet every now and then, the image of the man checking his watch flashed in her head. She didn't know why he intrigued her so much. Maybe because he didn't fit into the simple categories she usually placed people in. Maybe because he looked ordinary but behaved in ways that weren't quite ordinary. When the workday ended, she walked toward the bus stop again and noticed something strange. A black van she had never seen before was parked across the street. Two people sat inside, though she couldn't see their faces clearly through the tinted windows. They didn't seem to be looking at anything specific, but the van's presence felt out of place. She looked at it a moment longer, then reminded herself not to jump to conclusions. City streets were full of random vehicles. Nothing unusual about that. The next morning she returned to the cafe as usual. The moment she opened the door, she saw him sitting in the same corner again, but something in his posture looked more tense. His back was straighter, his eyes sharper. He wasn't pretending to read or blending into the room today. He was observing. She ordered her drink, but couldn't help watching him. He scanned the room slowly, almost methodically, like he was making sure everything and everyone was in the place he expected them to be. When she approached the pickup counter, he suddenly looked up and met her eyes. The seriousness in his expression made her pause. "Sit away from the windows today," he said quietly. She blinked, unsure what she just heard. "Why?" He didn't look away. "Just trust me." His tone wasn't dramatic or alarming, but it wasn't casual either. It sounded like a warning he wasn't fully explaining. A part of her wanted to laugh, to brush it off as a strange suggestion. But something in his eyes made her listen. Without asking more questions, she chose a seat close to the wall. After a moment, he returned his attention to the window. She watched him from the corner of her eye. Feeling a small knot of worry forming in her stomach, the cafe was peaceful. Yet she felt like something invisible pressed against the room, something she couldn't name. People chatted. Baristas worked quickly. Music played softly. Everything looked normal. But she sensed he was expecting something different. She tried to focus on her drink, but her eyes kept drifting toward him. He checked his watch again twice within a few minutes. He wasn't nervous. He wasn't restless. He was waiting. Then, just as she was about to stand and leave, she saw it again, a black van parked across the street. The same one from yesterday. Her breath caught for a moment. She hadn't even told him about the van, yet he seemed to notice it instantly. He leaned forward slightly, studying it, his face tightening with thought. After a few long seconds, he relaxed his posture again, as if the moment had passed. But she knew he had noticed something important. When she stood to leave, he spoke without looking up. "Be careful today." She stopped, turning slowly toward him. "Is something wrong?" He didn't answer with words. He just gave a small nod that didn't comfort her at all. She walked out of the cafe feeling a strange chill move through her. She didn't know who he really was, or why he seemed to notice things nobody else did. But one thing had become clear. Something was happening around him, and for reasons she couldn't understand yet. She was now part of it. The following day started with a sky that looked heavier than usual, as if the weather itself sensed that something in the air had shifted. She walked toward the cafe with a strange mix of curiosity and caution sitting in her chest. She tried to convince herself that she was overthinking everything, that the man's warning the day before had simply been a moment of concern, nothing more. But deep down, she knew something was different now. When she stepped inside the cafe, she didn't have to search for him. He was already in his corner, sitting with a posture that looked more controlled than ever. His hands rested on the table, but his eyes kept drifting, toward the door, toward the windows, toward the street outside. He looked like someone who wasn't just waiting, he was monitoring. She ordered her drink, feeling a small wave of nervousness as she stood there. She had never been the type to focus so much on strangers, but he didn't feel like a stranger anymore. Not after the way he had spoken to her. Not after noticing the same black van she had seen when the barista called her name. She picked up her drink slowly, holding it between her hands to calm herself. Without thinking too much, she walked toward his corner. "Morning," she said quietly. He looked up, and for a moment, the sharpness in his eyes softened. "Morning." She didn't sit, but she stayed standing close enough to talk to him without raising her voice. "The van was there again," she said. "Yesterday." Across from the cafe, he didn't react with surprise. Instead, he nodded once, as if confirming something he had already suspected. "You noticed it too," he said. "It felt out of place," she admitted. "And you seemed to recognize it." He didn't deny it. But he also didn't explain. He just studied her face for a moment longer. "You're observant," he said quietly. She didn't know if that was meant as a compliment or a warning. Before she could respond, the door opened again, and she watched him shift instantly. His body tensed almost invisibly, but she noticed it. Two people walked in, just regular customers, chatting and laughing, but his eyes followed them until they sat down. That was when she realized it wasn't only the van. He paid attention to everything. Finally, she sat down across from him. "Are you going to tell me what's going on?" she asked softly. He didn't answer right away. His gaze drifted to the street again. "Some things are safer left unsaid," he finally replied. At least for now. She didn't like that answer, but she understood something important. Whatever he knew, he believed it could put her in danger. "You warned me yesterday," she said. "You told me not to sit by the windows." "You listened," he said without looking at her. "That was good." She felt a small shiver run through her. "Why did you warn me?" He hesitated, then spoke with a tone that was softer than before. "Because you've been near me more than you realize, and that means you've been noticed." Her heart skipped. "Noticed by who?" He didn't answer. Before she could ask again, something unusual caught her attention. A small device, barely noticeable, was clipped inside his jacket near the shoulder. She couldn't see much of it, just a dark edge beneath the fabric. It didn't look like a phone. It didn't look like anything ordinary. Her eyes widened slightly. She wasn't sure if she should mention it. He noticed her staring and followed her gaze. With one simple motion, he pulled his jacket closed, hiding the device completely. "It's nothing you need to worry about," he said quickly, but his tone didn't match his words. His tone said everything. She didn't push further. Instead, she leaned back in the chair, trying to calm the mix of questions spinning in her mind. When she stepped outside after finishing her drink, she half expected him to follow like he had the day before. But today, he stayed inside. He watched her go, however. She felt his gaze on her as she walked away. The rest of her day unfolded like normal, though she barely paid attention to anything. At lunch, she caught herself staring at the restaurant window every few minutes. On the bus ride home, she kept checking the cars behind them. Something about her routine now felt fragile, like she had stepped too close to a line she didn't even know existed. The next morning, when she returned to the cafe, she immediately saw something different. He wasn't alone at his table. Someone else was sitting across from him, a man she had never seen before. He wasn't dressed like a regular customer. He wore a plain dark jacket. No bag, no drink, no phone on the table. The two of them spoke quietly, their faces serious, their conversation tight. They weren't friends catching up. Their posture, their expressions, the short, sharp movements, they looked like people discussing something important. She stood frozen near the entrance. Unsure if she should approach or leave, the man in the corner noticed her immediately. His eyes flicked toward her, then softened, but only for a second. Then he returned to his conversation. She felt torn. Part of her wanted to walk over and ask what was happening. Another part of her knew this wasn't the right moment. The stranger sitting with him glanced in her direction as well. His eyes didn't look curious. They looked assessing, evaluating. She stepped back instinctively. After a moment, she left the cafe without ordering anything. She didn't know why, but she felt like she had seen something she wasn't supposed to witness. Later that afternoon, she found herself walking a little faster, glancing behind her more than usual. The world around her didn't look different, but she felt different inside it. When she reached her street, she stopped suddenly. The same black van was parked. Near the corner, not across from the cafe this time, near her home. Her heart tightened. She stayed completely still, her pulse thumping in her ears. There were no people around it, no sign of movement. But the timing, the location, it couldn't be a coincidence. She didn't approach the van. She didn't go near it. Instead, she walked around the block, taking a longer route home just to avoid it. By the time she reached her door, her hands were trembling slightly. Later that evening, as she sat on her couch trying to steady her thoughts, her phone buzzed. A message from an unknown number appeared on her screen. "Stay alert. Don't go near unfamiliar vehicles." She froze. She didn't need to ask who it was from. The quiet man from the cafe, the one who watched everything, the one who moved with calm precision, was now watching out for her. And whether she liked it or not, she was becoming part of something far bigger than she had imagined. The next morning arrived with a strange heaviness, as if the world had paused overnight and was only now deciding whether to move forward. She woke up earlier than usual, unable to shake the memory of the message she had received the night before. The words kept repeating in her mind, "Stay alert. Don't go near unfamiliar vehicles." It was simple advice, but the meaning behind it carried a weight she couldn't ignore. She spent a long moment sitting on the edge of her bed, wondering whether she should even go to the cafe today. A part of her felt safer staying home, keeping some distance from whatever was happening around her. But another part of her knew she needed answers. And the only person who had them was the quiet man in the corner. After getting ready, she stepped out of her apartment and looked around carefully. The street looked normal again. No van, no strange figures, no sign of anything unusual. But the absence didn't comfort her, only made things feel more uncertain. She took a steady breath and made her way toward the cafe. When she entered, the familiar warmth wrapped around her, but today it didn't calm her. Instead, she scanned the room quickly, looking for him. He was there sitting alone this time. His posture was different from yesterday. Less guarded, but still focused. He looked up when she stepped in, and his eyes softened for a quick moment. Almost like he was relieved she came. She joined the line, but her mind wasn't on her order. She kept thinking about the van near her home, the message on her phone, and the stranger who had been sitting with him. Everything felt tangled now. After she got her drink, she hesitated before walking toward him. But he nodded slightly, giving her silent permission to join him. She sat down across from him. For a few seconds, neither of them spoke. His eyes were scanning the room again, then drifting to the window, then back to her. Finally, she whispered, "How did you get my number?" He didn't look surprised by the question. "I had to make sure you'd see the warning," he said. "It wasn't meant to scare you." "Well, it did," she replied quietly. His expression shifted, almost like he wanted to apologize but didn't know how. "I understand," he said. "But you needed to know." She took a breath, trying to calm her racing thoughts. "Why was that van near my home? Was that because of you?" He didn't speak right away. He looked down at the table, then back up. "There are people watching me," he said finally, "and lately they've been getting closer." Her stomach tightened. "Why?" He hesitated again, but this time he didn't hold back. "I'm part of a government unit," he said, lowering his voice. "My work involves monitoring individuals who pose certain risks. Some of the people I've been tracking recently, they're more active than usual." She stared at him, unsure how to process those words. "So you're—" She couldn't finish the sentence. He gave a small nod. "Not everything you see in movies is real, but some of it comes close." She leaned back in her seat, feeling a mix of disbelief and dread. It was one thing to suspect he wasn't ordinary. It was another to hear him confirm it. "You shouldn't have gotten involved," he said softly. "I didn't plan for you to be pulled into this." "I didn't plan it either," she replied, her voice a little shaky. He exhaled, as if weighing a decision. "You asked yesterday if I recognized the van," he said. "I did. They've been watching my movements lately. And since you've been around me, they may have noticed you too." She felt a chill move along her skin. "Why?" "Because they assume anyone near me might be important," he said. "Or useful." She swallowed. "Useful for what?" "To pressure me," he answered quietly. Her heart sank. She didn't want to imagine what that meant. "Yesterday at the cafe," she said, "who was that man you were talking to?" "One of my team," he explained. "He came to update me on a situation, and to warn me that things are moving faster than expected." She nodded slowly, trying to piece everything together. "So what happens now?" He leaned in slightly. "You need to be careful for a few days. Avoid taking predictable routes. Don't stay out too late. If something feels wrong, trust your instincts." She let out a breath she didn't realize she'd been holding. "Is it really that serious?" "Yes," he said, without hesitation. but I'm doing everything I can to keep things controlled." She stared at him, feeling a strange mix of fear and trust. He spoke with calm certainty, the same calm she had seen when he helped the cyclist. It made her believe him even if she didn't fully understand everything. Just then, the cafe door opened, and two people walked in. They stood still for a moment, scanning the room, not casually, not like customers. She saw his expression change instantly. He straightened, his eyes locking onto the two figures. The tension around him sharpened in a way she had never witnessed before. "Stay seated," he whispered. She froze. The two men walked toward their table with steady, purposeful steps. When they reached the spot beside them, one of them spoke in a low, even tone. "We need to talk," the man said. Her breath caught. She looked at the man across from her. But his face remained calm even, though she could feel the weight of the moment. "Not here," he said. "This won't take long," the stranger insisted. The exchange was quiet, but the tension was unmistakable. The air around the table felt charged, heavy. The stranger leaned closer. "You know what we want?" The man across from her didn't flinch. "And you know I'm not giving it to you." Stillness settled over the table. Then, after a long moment, the stranger stepped back. "This isn't over," one of them said. They turned and left the cafe. Disappearing as quickly as they had arrived, she sat frozen in her seat, her hands trembling slightly. "What? What was that?" she whispered. He looked at her with a seriousness she had never seen before. "That," he said, "was your confirmation of what?" She asked. "That everything I told you is real." She didn't speak. She couldn't. He stood up slowly. "You need to go straight home. Don't take your usual path. And don't open your door for anyone you don't recognize." She nodded weakly. He walked her to the door, but before she stepped outside, he stopped her. "I'm going to fix this," he said softly. "But you need to trust me a little longer." She looked at him. Searching his eyes, even through the fear, she felt a strange, steady comfort. "I do trust you," she said quietly. He gave a small nod, and she stepped out into a world that suddenly felt sharper, darker, and far less predictable than the one she had known just days ago. The following morning, the city seemed quieter, almost as if it knew the events of the previous day had left an invisible mark. She left her apartment cautiously, taking side streets instead of her usual path. Her heart raced with each step, but she reminded herself of the man's words. Trust your instincts. Avoid predictable routes. When she reached the corner cafe, she hesitated before stepping inside. She needed answers, but she also felt a weight of uncertainty pressing on her. As soon as she pushed open the door, the warmth and familiar aroma enveloped her. Yet, it no longer felt entirely comforting. Something had changed, and she knew it. He was there, sitting alone. This time, his posture was relaxed, yet his eyes carried the same alertness she had come to recognize. He glanced at her and gave a small, reassuring nod. For a moment, it felt like a small island of calm in the storm surrounding her. She ordered her drink, but remained standing for a moment, unsure of what to say. Finally, she walked over to his table. "Good morning," she whispered. "Morning," he replied, his voice steady but low. "We need to talk," she nodded, sliding into the seat across from him. The events of the past days had left her with more questions than answers. "The men from yesterday," she began. "Who were they? What did they want?" "They're part of a group I've been tracking," he explained. "They think I know things that could disrupt their plans. You were nearby, so they may have noticed you too." She shivered. "Why me?" "You were in the wrong place at the wrong time," he said gently. "But I'll make sure you're safe. That's why you need to trust me completely." She took a deep breath. The fear she felt was strong, but the calm determination in his eyes gave her a strange sense of confidence before she could ask more questions. A soft noise at the door made her glance up. Two men entered, but they didn't notice her. They headed straight for him. Her pulse quickened. He stood slowly, moving between her and the newcomers. "Stay behind me," he whispered. The men stopped at the edge of the table, their presence tense and deliberate. They spoke briefly, exchanging words she couldn't understand. The atmosphere was charged, every movement deliberate and measured. After a few moments, the men left, giving a final glance that carried a silent warning. The moment they were gone, the tension in the room dissolved. Leaving behind an eerie calm, she exhaled slowly, her hands trembling. That was intense. He nodded, sitting back down. It's not over yet, but I've taken steps to secure the area. For now, you're safe. She looked at him, realizing the depth of what he did to protect her. The ordinary man she had noticed in the cafe was not ordinary at all. He carried a life she couldn't imagine, one filled with danger, vigilance, and responsibility beyond what most people could understand. "Why tell me all this now?" she asked softly. "Because you deserve to know," he said. "And because you've already been involved more than you realize. Ignorance won't help you." She nodded slowly, letting his words sink in. Fear was still there, but it was mixed now with a profound respect. This man, this secretive figure, had pulled her into a world she had never known, and yet he did so with care. With a sense of protection that left her both awed and unsettled. The cafe seemed quieter now, almost suspended in time. Outside, the city carried on with its normal rhythm, unaware of the danger that had brushed so close. She realized how fragile life could be, how quickly ordinary routines could transform into extraordinary events. He stood to leave, motioning for her to follow him. They stepped outside together, and she noticed the streets were unusually empty. He guided her through back alleys and side paths, avoiding any familiar routes. After a few minutes, they reached a safer location, one she hadn't known existed. He stopped and turned to her. "This is temporary," he said. "I will make sure you are moved safely if needed. For now, stay here, keep alert, and trust nothing is as it seems outside." Her mind was racing, but she felt a strange calm. His confidence was contagious. Despite the fear, she felt protected. Like a small piece of certainty in a world that had suddenly become unpredictable, she looked at him. Realizing the depth of what had happened over the past days, a simple morning routine had turned into something extraordinary. A man she had noticed quietly in a corner of the cafe was not only extraordinary but a protector. Someone who carried secrets and dangers she could barely imagine. "I don't even know your name," she whispered. He smiled faintly, a hint of warmth in his eyes. "That's not important right now. What's important is that you stay safe." She nodded, understanding that the ordinary world she had known was gone. But even as the fear lingered, she felt a new sense of awareness. A recognition that life could change in a heartbeat, and that sometimes trust came from the most unexpected places. As he walked away, blending into the city streets like any ordinary man, she realized she might never see him again. Yet, she carried the memory of his calm, his vigilance, and the extraordinary courage that had transformed a routine encounter into a story she would never forget. And though the city moved on around her, she felt changed forever, knowing that the quiet man in the corner had revealed a world she had never imagined. A world where ordinary life and hidden danger intersected in the most unexpected ways.